All right, let's dive into something that's, well, it's pretty unsettling, but it's also incredibly important to understand. We're going to talk about what happens when an entire society, or at least a big chunk of it, seems to lose its grip on reality.
I mean, just really think about that for a second. Imagine that. You wake up, and it feels like the world went crazy overnight. But here's the kicker. Everyone around you is absolutely convinced that you're the one who's lost your mind. It sounds like a horror movie, right? But this is a very real psychological phenomenon.
So there's actually a name for this. It's called mass psychosis. And we're not just talking about some bad idea that goes viral. No, this is much, much deeper. It's like a kind of collective spell that can literally capture the minds of entire nations.
And here's the thing that's so wild about it. This goes way beyond a simple disagreement about facts. When a mass psychosis takes hold, people get locked into a shared delusion. They can believe two things that completely contradict each other, and they won't even notice. Logic just goes out the window, and all that's left are these powerful emotional slogans.
You know, it's tempting to think this is some new problem, a bug in our modern internet-fueled world. But it's not. This is an ancient feature of the human mind. Think back to ancient Rome, with the whole bread and circuses thing, distracting everyone while the empire fell apart. Or the Middle Ages with the witch hunts, where sheer terror just took over. The technology has changed for sure, but the basic human psychology that falls for this stuff, it's exactly the same.
So, how on earth does this actually happen? I mean, why do smart, rational people get swept up into these completely irrational crowds? To get that, we have to look under the hood at the engine that drives it all, the psychology of the crowd.
So way back, over 100 years ago, a psychologist named Gustave Le Bon figured something out that is just fascinating. The moment we join a crowd, a switch gets flipped in our heads. As an individual, we weigh evidence, we feel a sense of personal responsibility, but the second we merge into that crowd mind, all of that just dissolves. Emotion completely takes over, and we become impulsive, angry, and strangely obedient.
But for that crowd to have a direction, to get it moving, you need one key ingredient. And that ingredient is fear. Fear is the fuel for the whole machine. It works like a laser beam, narrowing our focus so intensely that it shuts down the part of our brain that's good at complex, rational thought.
And the reason fear is so unbelievably effective is because it hijacks our most basic survival wiring. Our brains are built to react first and think later when we smell danger. And you know what's really powerful? A vague, invisible threat. Because then our own imaginations do all the work, creating the monster. A brain that's scared doesn't want complexity. It wants a simple story. It wants a hero, and it wants a villain to blame. Okay, but this brings up a huge question, right? Because even when we're scared, a lot of us have that little voice in the back of our head going, hang on, this doesn't feel right, so why do we so often just push that voice down and go along with the crowd anyway?
Well, the answer is hardwired into us. It's an ancient survival program. For ancestors, getting kicked out of the tribe was a death sentence, so belonging equals survival. That program is still running in our brains today, and it's so powerful that our brain literally processes being rejected by the group with the same intensity as real physical pain. That fear of being alone is primal.
And if you want to see just how powerful this is, check out this famous experiment from the 1950s by a guy named Solomon Asch. He brought people into a room, showed them a few lines on a card, and asked them a super simple question. Which two lines are the same length? The answer was completely obvious. But here's the twist. Everyone else in the room was an actor. And one by one, they all gave the same, confident, but totally wrong answer. And what happened? About 3/4 of the real participants just caved. They went along with the group, denying the evidence of their own eyes. The need to fit in was literally stronger than their own perception of reality. It's just wild. Now, this whole process of falling into a delusion, it isn't random. It's not just chaos. It actually follows a pretty predictable pattern. So let's walk through the 5 stages that can pull an entire society into this kind of trance. Okay, so first you get disorientation. This is when things feel unstable. The old rules don't seem to work anymore, and people are anxious and looking for answers. Then, out of that chaos, comes simplification. A really simple, powerful story pops up that has a clear villain to blame and a clear hero to save the day. Next up is conformity. People start adopting that story just to feel safe and be part of the group, and anyone who's quiet is just assumed to agree with everyone else.
This naturally leads to stage 4, aggression. This is where the group turns on anyone who questions the story. Dissent becomes dangerous. And finally, if you're lucky, you get to the awakening. This happens when the story just gets too far from reality. The cracks in the illusion get too big to ignore, and the spell starts to break.
So, seeing those stages is one thing, and it's a huge step. But the real question is, what do you do about it? How do you protect your own mind? How do you break the spell if you realize you're caught in the middle of it?
Now, I've got to be honest with you. Waking up from this isn't always some happy, joyful moment. A lot of the time, it feels more like grief. It can be incredibly lonely when you suddenly realize that the ideas, the systems, maybe even the people you trusted, were all built on shaky ground. It takes some serious courage to face that head on.
So, how do we build a kind of psychological immunity? Well, it starts with awareness. That means asking yourself, hey, this strong opinion I have, is it really mine, or did someone put it there? Then, emotional control. When you feel that surge of outrage, just create a little space. Take a breath between what happened and how you react. Third, find a deeper meaning in your life, a personal why that's strong enough to anchor you. Fourth, find real allies. I'm not talking about an echo chamber. I mean a few people who care more about honesty than they do about comfort. And finally, take control of your information diet. Actively look for clarity, not just things that make you angry or afraid.
And really, what this all boils down to is this. The final escape isn't about fighting the crowd. It's about outgrowing your need for the crowd's approval. It's about building your own internal compass so that no matter which way the winds are blowing outside, you know your own true north. Your validation has to come from inside, not from the outside world.
And this leaves us with one final, really powerful thought. In a world that seems to be going mad, maybe the most revolutionary act isn't protesting or fighting the system. Maybe it's just quietly, deliberately freeing your own mind. Because when enough individual minds break free, the delusions that hold those systems up, they just can't stand. That's where the real change always begins.